One of the things I like about YouTube, and to a lesser extent things like Twitter and Facebook, is the potential for intelligence that exists on those systems. And I know that sounds hard to believe, considering what a lot of stupidity there is. I mean, sometimes just the spelling alone on comments is enough to make you lose faith in the human race, but I think there is a lot of intelligence about. And by that I don't mean that there's intelligent videos. I suppose there are, I guess. But even the smartest video, it's only really smart because of its context. You know, you've got to kind of understand the context of ideas that really smart videos are working in. So they're not smart in and of themselves, they're smart because of what they refer to, kind of. But the overall system of YouTube, and as I say, those other social networks, I think has the potential to be smart because of some really unusual features I think you're getting in these systems, which I'm starting to refer to as leaky networks. I probably didn't come up with that term, but I'm kind of thinking of them as leaky networks, because it seems to me that the kind of transmission of information and communication and the passage of ideas through the system is pretty much unique. Well, it's fairly unique, at least. I mean, the only other social analogy I have is something like a cocktail party, or a party of any kind, I suppose. But when you go to a party, not that I go to parties, but when you go to a party, there's all kinds of conversations happening. So there's a general kind of hum in the room, and as you walk through the room, you can overhear snatches of conversations. So the conversations don't stay between the participants; they kind of leak out into the system at large. So as you're walking past a pair of people having a conversation, you may overhear something that triggers something in you, and when you get to another side of the room you might pick up that theme with someone else. And so there's this odd kind of leakage that's taking place. And I think YouTube's got some of that. The significant difference, I think, being, well, first of all, it's asynchronous, so it's not dependent upon these conversations happening at a unified point in time, within linear time. They can happen at all kinds of different time frames. But also, you know, some of the technology organises the kind of architecture of the conversation, you know, with the what's related videos or the other videos by, or all the other kind of systems that go along that, and the response systems. So I think there's something of the asynchronous leaky network, the asynchronous cocktail party about it, which is very interesting. The reason why, I guess this is the reason why I'm thinking of it as an intelligence system, is there are a couple of other examples of what I think of as leaky networks, which do display kind of intelligence. One of which, I guess the archetypal one, is the brain. Because one of the interesting things about the brain is that it's not a hardwired system in which the passage of information flows through through sealed and unitary networks of neuronal connections. These connections all leak. They're very leaky systems, quite literally leak. So the neurotransmitters that operate in a synaptic gap between neurons, as well as acting as transmitters for activation potentials across those gaps, they also leak into the surrounding tissues of the brain. So other neural connections, which are near the ones that are activated, are more likely to activate as a result. So it's almost as if they pick up on the ideas that are being discussed near them. They pick up on the activation patterns, they pick up on the activations of other parts of the network which are adjacent. A little bit like overhearing something at a cocktail party. And there's a kind of experiential correlate to that, I think. I don't suppose for one moment it's connected to that neuronal property. But there is a kind of experiential thing where you're kind of talking about something, or you're thinking about something. You can kind of feel the glow of other ideas around the sides of it. It's as if the stream of consciousness that you're having, or the stream of conversation you're having, isn't just a tightly constrained and tightly bound stream. It kind of leaks and spills over the side, and you can kind of sense the other possibilities, other possible tributaries which can lead off that, the other related resonant activities and ideas. So I think as I say, that's the kind of experiential correlate. And the other example I've got of a leaky network, kind of, is from bacteriology. There are certain bacteria, and I think that one that does that kind of face-eating disease, what's it called? fasciolis, I can't remember now. I think this is one of them. It's a certain bacteria which it only becomes toxic at certain concentrations when there's enough bacteria in the system. It's fairly benign, it doesn't do anything. You know, you get an infection of a particular disease, and it's not as if you get this disease a little bit, and then the more bacteria that's in you, the more disease you get. That's not what happens with these particular bacteria. You get an infection, and nothing happens, no symptoms, or very few symptoms. It's only when the infection gets to a certain level that suddenly they start producing toxins, and of course by that time you're completely riddled with the things. They're all producing toxins simultaneously, and you have a massive problem on your hands. But the way that works, apparently, is that these individual bacteria are constantly releasing chemicals into the surrounding tissues. You know, as well as doing the normal communication thing. They're floating around the place, they're bumping into one another, doing all this stuff, and dividing and multiplying. So there's routine linear communication strategies in place, but they're also leaking chemicals into the surrounding tissue. And when the concentration of that chemical gets to a certain point, then it triggers this mass unitary response. So they all suddenly start producing toxic chemicals, and which affects their host. And that's it's hard to think of that in terms of intelligence, but I think it is. I think it's a very specific piece of intelligent action, which is the result of not a well-organized network or a sophisticated network, but a leaky network, one in which the information and the kind of knowledge possessed but within it's being communicated through the linear channels is also filtering out into the surrounding environment. And I think that's what YouTube does, for me at least. That's how I kind of imagine it. When I'm watching videos and when I'm making videos, I'm not talking to one person, I'm not forming part, there's not a linear chain of information. There's all kinds of other things leaking across the sides, and some of the things that I'll be talking about will be picked up elsewhere, perhaps repurposed, perhaps interpreted differently or misinterpreted. And I'm doing the same. I'm constantly hearing snatches of conversation, which I'm probably not processing properly, but which I'm kind of making use of, and I'm allowing to overflow my own cognitive banks, if you like, and spill over the sides of my thinking as well. Anyway, I don't know what the application of this. I don't know whether anybody would agree with that constitutes intelligence. But I suppose all I'm saying is that there's a potential for intelligence in the system, or a potential for a reading of intelligence of the system, because it is a kind of leaky network, an asynchronous leaky network at that. And the potential for intelligence there is probably, in my opinion, greater than the intelligence possible by any one contributor or any one commenter.